At time of writing, 2020 is almost over. While the year overall has been one hell of a thing, at least in the gaming sphere, for the most part, the medium has continued to release powerhouse title after powerhouse title. Yes, there have been some delays, oh god, Cyberpunk, Jesus, but most major games and a new set of consoles largely hit their mark. With so much positivity, you'd have to try mighty hard to stand out for the wrong reasons. And yet, whenever big business tries to mesh empty money-making formulas with otherwise great ideas, anything can happen. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are the 9 worst video games of 2020. Number 9, Fast and Furious Crossroads. Oh god, can someone just do a really good arcade racing game with an IP big enough to start the craze all over again? We've got the phenomenal inertial drift and hotshot racing flying the flag for indies, but when it comes to recognizability, the landscape is comprised of remasters like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit or Burnout Paradise. Fast and Furious then could have perfectly blended the two. Annoyingly, it gets so close. What starts as fun side swipes and gadgets devolves into sheer repetition, seeing you trigger set pieces where more interesting things happen in cutscenes than anything directly controllable. Clearly something is massively wrong, as developers Slightly Mad Studios are an incredibly talented team with a solid track history. For them to turn something in that feels so off but still includes Vin Diesel and others reprising their roles, Crossroads is the embodiment of wasted potential. Number 8, WWE 2K Battlegrounds. Sorry Battlegrounds, you had so much potential and you're good for a few rounds, but when you could be up there with WWE All-Stars or the unbelievably great Def Jam games, this just wasn't enough. Typified by letting you win a match by literally slapping the same button over and over, Battlegrounds was clearly designed for younger gamers in mind, but it didn't have enough charm to pull anything off. From bizarrely caricatured wrestler models that look prototyped rather than deliberate, to a totally barren story mode and even a push towards microtransactions, this should have been an easy stopgap between bigger WWE installments, but it falls almost completely flat. Number 7, Crysis Remastered. If you were there at the time, you know how much of an eyeball-widening event seeing the original Crysis in action truly was. It was pretty damn incredible, to the point where Can It Run Crysis became the benchmark for testing any new gaming PC. Cut to early 2020 and word arrived of a full Crysis remaster, something that had the potential to be truly special. Come launch, it somehow looked worse than where a PC on max settings left off in 2007. Lighting was all over the place, with many scenes looking less detailed than before. Character models and environments were a mixed bag, and the game itself never felt modernized in any meaningful way. Number 6, 13. When you've got one of the most recognizable shooters of all time, a cult classic easily identified by literally any screenshot of its awesome cel-shaded style, why on earth would you then ditch everything? 13's remake landed to utter confusion from newcomers and fans alike. That former gorgeous art style was made into a generic bland fest with most characters looking straight out of Fortnite. In-game comic panel cutaways were reduced or removed, and the game's awesomely animated cutscenes were ditched entirely. 13's remake was received so poorly the original 2003 game outsold it at launch, simply because people were reminded of just how much better that version was. Number 5, FIFA 2020 Legacy Edition. Okay, this has to stop. It started back with FIFA 18 on Switch, where that console's version was the exact same as the Legacy Edition released on last-gen hardware. For FIFA 19, 20 and 21 though, where PlayStation and Xbox got updated graphics or, you know, anything put in to justify a premium price tag, the Switch got a re-release of last year's title with only new kits and updated squad names. It got so bad this year that IGN literally copy-pasted their review for 2019's game, with multiple outlets and especially fans saying that enough was enough. Overall, it's such a strange way to go business-wise. The Switch is one of the highest selling consoles of the last decade. There's a ginormous football-loving audience hungry for anything to play on the go, and yet EA choose to split that difference by giving them the most paltry offering possible. As it stands, this half-baked, quasi-full release simply isn't acceptable. Number 4, Predator Hunting Grounds. Talk about something we were willing to come together. You've got the developers of the cult-beloved Friday the 13th having nailed down the basics of asymmetric multiplayer. One person can be a hulking, overpowered character, and everyone else gets to go after them. Apply this to one of the most treasured monster IPs in entertainment history, and we should have been away. How could it possibly go wrong? Well, with a tiny selection of just 3 maps, an awful feel to combat whenever you're stuck playing as the Marines, and even the Predator feeling clumsy as hell, thanks to an auto-animating Predcore movement system. Yes, all the sound effects and cool trophy kill style animations are here, but when the core of how everything feels is just so cheap and unsatisfying, Hunting Grounds runtime quickly devolves into only a few rounds. Number 3. Mafia 2 Definitive Edition. One of 2 games I'm carrying over from our mid-year list of the worst titles, Mafia 2's quote-unquote Definitive Edition has remained an unacceptable mess across the remainder of the year, made so much worse by the effort put into Mafia 1's Definitive Edition. Where that game received a genuinely jaw-dropping visual overhaul, Mafia 2 still struggles to confidently load much of anything. With buildings glitching into view and the frame rate tanking, it's gotten so bad that Mafia diehards simply recommend you pick up the original PS3 or Xbox 360 version instead. While you can totally see what 2K were going for, releasing a Definitive Edition trilogy of all 3 titles better than ever, it's abundantly clear after a few seconds that only the original game received any love, care, or attention. Number 2. Warcraft III Reforged. Practically the Fallout 76 of 2020, this much anticipated remaster/remake is still one of the lowest rated titles of 2020, thanks to Blizzard removing a ton of features from the original, not including advertised features, and retroactively patching the standard version of the game to be even worse. First, overhauled cutscenes, the campaign and overall presentation shown during the reveal was gutted from that retail release. Next were various modes and features like custom campaigns and crossplay removed, balancing tweaks to iconic quests, and things like tournaments, clans, and ranked ladders all taken out. The original version of Warcraft 3 shares a client with Reforged, so all these changes were retroactively made to the existing version of the game, affecting something that fans had been playing and loving for almost 20 years. Blizzard did attempt to quell things by announcing patches for certain elements, but the major stuff that got people hooked, i.e. the revamped campaign, was forever left on the cutting room floor. And number 1, Marvel's Avengers. If we're talking the worst game of the year, it has to get almost every last element of its design wrong. That game is Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix's Avengers, an empty skeleton of a title designed with maximum longevity in mind, treating the Avengers IP as bankable regardless of what's actually on offer. Sure, the campaign is serviceable, and sure, combat becomes enjoyable enough after around 10 hours, but the reality is you can see the business-focused cogs whirring away at every turn. The character-specific challenge cards incentivizing microtransactions, the invisible loot grind meaning Square Enix could sign as many sponsorship deals as they like, the quote-unquote long-term plan for characters and events to be added over the course of multiple years, making up an eventual price point that you're just being charged for now. Simply put, it takes a Herculean feat of mismanagement and tone-deaf prioritization to mess up the first AAA Avengers game ever. Props to Crystal Dynamics for getting something over the finish line, but sadly this has turned into another anthem. And those are my picks for the 9 worst video games of 2020. Let me know your own choices down in the comments below, and please check out the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I'll catch you soon.